Welcome, everyone, to the Inclusion Podcast. I'm Dr. Julie Costin.
And I'm Dr. Christy Preddy-Franzak. We're so glad you're here as we explore all things inclusion.
So whether you're a school leader, an educator, a parent, or simply passionate about inclusion, this podcast is for you.
In each episode, we go beyond the usual conversations, diving into what truly makes inclusive education work.
Together, let's make a difference, one conversation at a time. Here we go. Episode 44. Woo-woo. It's all about directions and corrections. And man, Christy and I spent a lot of time in schools observing. And I have this little column on my side of my note-taking area that is like time of day when I want to poke my own eyes out. And it's usually about 10:05 if I'm lucky.
And you started at 10?
No, usually I start at 9, but 10 sometimes yes.
Yeah.
And it's because of the amount of auditory information and input or directions and corrections that kids are receiving throughout the day.
Well, let me play devil's advocate for a minute, Julie, because as a parent or as an adult in a community, and certainly as an educator in a school, I kind of feel like it's my job to give kids directions. In fact, if they don't have them, it's total chaos. And I would say right behind it, same with corrections. Like I'm there to inform them of and shape it and mold it and tell them the right way, right? Like, why is this making you poke your eyes out? It's my job.
Well, I said it's making me poke my eyes out for a couple of reasons. One is auditory input, the amount of it.
Okay.
And two is that many learners actually go the other direction with the number of directions and corrections. When I say go the other direction, it means it sends them out of their prefrontal cortex, or they're unable to learn, or they're in flight, fight, freeze, or faint because they're overwhelmed with the directions and corrections, the number, the quantity, and corrections. Don't forget, even as an adult, if you've ever been corrected lately, that sends you out of your prefrontal cortex because you feel shame, you feel like I did it wrong, etc. And yet with kids, we do it all day long, and we want them to stay in this learning place. So today we're going to give you all sorts of alternatives to directions and corrections, and we're actually going to kind of give you a formula that helps kids make their own decisions and kind of create their own learning.
Yeah, so you're going to want to grab, as always, the download for this episode, which is at inclusiveschooling.com/download44. You can also just, any place you are getting this podcast, you'll see in the description a link to the download. And then if you're checking out the show notes for the episode, you'll also find the download. So it's in a lot of different places and easy to find at inclusiveschooling.com/download44. And Julie, I wanted to circle back to what you said about how directions and corrections, even as adults, can flood us with feeling. So I'm going to give a quick example that came to my mind when you said that, because I want to just hit on stressors before we get into the formula of how to maybe interact differently with kids. So have you ever been at a stoplight and you either space off or reach for something in the back seat or maybe check your phone, and the light changes and you're the first one in line, but you're the last to notice that the light changed. So people honk at you.
Yeah.
Okay. Just personally, does anything happen in your nervous system, or do you just go, oh, thanks, I'm driving along? Do you know?
I'm just going to use a scale of 1 to 10, and I would call that a 3 or a 4. Like, meaning, oh, I'm sorry. Oh gosh, I screwed up. I messed up. It would be a 3 or a 4 for me.
But like, oh, and you're onward. I would say for me, I'm probably a good 9. Meaning like, I feel like I need to buy cupcakes and apologize to the guy or person behind me to say sorry. I feel like I need to justify I wasn't on my phone. I was like picking up something on the floor, like,
Yeah.
it's a big shame response for me.
Yeah. Yeah. And so that's a really good example. All of us have a different
Yeah.
experience with corrections and directions. And Christy's bringing up the fact that for some people, it's a 10 or a 9 to be told what to do or what to not do, or to be reminded that they were doing something that wasn't right. And so we're going to talk about language on a formula today, about how to create language that does several different things. So instead of being shame-based and instead of flipping lids, it's going to encourage critical thinking. It's going to promote self-regulation and ownership. It's going to be helpful for your relationship with kids. It's going to reduce power struggles. It's going to support them in their own executive functioning development. It's going to encourage curiosity and engagement. And it's going to align perfectly with inclusive practices, believe it or not. And it's going to enhance problem solving.
Wow, Julie, this sounds like an elixir, like,
It is.
the fountain of youth practically. So friends, you're going to want this download at inclusiveschooling.com/download 44. So Julie, let's talk about the formula, and then let's talk about and make sure people understand why this formula will do all of those things you just listed and
Yeah.
keep stressors, low.
Yeah. So here's the formula. It's a declarative statement, or just a statement, paired with an open-ended question. Okay, that's the formula. A declarative statement paired with an open-ended question. And all of them are judgment-free, and I'll give you a couple examples. So let's imagine you're working with a 7th grader, and 3 people are supposed to be working on this poster. And you say, "Oh, it looks like 2 of you are working on the poster. I wonder how you could join in," is what you say to the 3rd person. And so, "I wonder how you could join in" is an invitation for that kid to say, "I would join in. It's just I can't because they're hogging the markers," or whatever it is. And so it begins a discussion and invites a discussion, as opposed to, "All 3 of you need to be working on this. Why aren't you involved?" etc. So you start to state something and then ask a question. Christy, how would you change the formula, or what would you add to the formula?
No, I'll just add on that little part where you said, I want to connect it to when you were poking your eyes out earlier and you said there was just so much verbal input. Can you give me an example, Julie? Because you always do such a great job. I can hear a mom in you when you do it. But like, let's say I'm supposed to line up at the door and I'm not yet lining up at the door. What would we often see an adult say to the kid?
Oh my gosh. So we take data on this and you'd be so surprised. Imagine your own self, audio recorded, giving a direction. And it usually looks like this. "Everybody, it's time to line up at the door. Last time, remember, we were late to music. Do you remember? Miss So-and-so was not pleased with us. We got to get there quicker today. That's right. No, your shoes are for physical education. No, yes, you're going to change. Look at me. Who's listening? Great. Yep, I can see you're listening. Now, we're going to line up at the door now, but don't forget, you're going to need the right shoes. So if you don't have, do you see?"
Yeah. And we've all done this. I mean, I've done it with adult learners, Julie.
Oh, Christy.
And so what the formula does is it makes a statement, it asks a question, and that's it. Period. Now we wait, we pause, we read cues, we give opportunity, we just give space instead of a stream of repeating
Verbal
variations of the verbal directions or just verbal input, but it's usually, as you just did,
Yeah.
directions and corrections in a whole stream. Okay.
Yeah.
So that's the magic, friends, is you might say, well, you guys said there was so much verbal input, but how is this not still verbal? Aren't you still talking? It's like, oh yes, but we're just being more succinct, kind of drawing it to a close with the statement, asking for problem solving, collaboration, relationship building, understanding in the question.
That's right. So I'm going to give several more examples just to get people going. You're going to want this handout because there are tons. And how we divided this handout up. So first we look at social skills, and then we give early childhood examples, middle grade examples, and high school examples. Then we look at safety or transitions, and we give early childhood, middle grades, high school. Then we look at getting ready or tidying up. early childhood, middle grades, high school. So you can see that we have all these bigger areas. I'll take
So there's
getting ready.
10 of them. There's 10 bigger areas divided by like kind of age appropriate language
Yeah.
across 3 categories. Okay.
So let's just take getting ready or tidying up. And I'm going to take an early childhood example. It would be, we have to leave soon. What might we need to do to get ready? And Christy, I think we add in the formula. We haven't done it before, but the pause or the silence
Yeah,
is part of the formula. Yeah, it is part of the formula. You say it once, you say it clearly, and it is a pause, which allows for the student, the human, the child, to go, oh, we got to leave soon. Bummer, or have feelings about it, or
have a
yippee.
feeling about it, and then they need to process that feeling about it. Sure.
And then the question is, what might we need to do to get ready? Now, you're asking them to plan and decision make essentially to executive function. And this is a very hard task. But when kids are allowed to start to think about this, they can become more independent with these things. And too often, we decide to scaffold it for them. So we say, instead, hey, we have to leave soon. So don't remember, we have to get our shoes. We have to get our backpack. We've got to make sure that we're cleaned up. Last night, the janitor wasn't pleased with how the floor looked, right? You'll see 1,000 words. Instead, we have to leave soon. What we need to do to get ready. And now it's in the kids' hands or the kids' thought process to get ready.
And I think, Julie, the pause or the wait time is, as we know, an access point.
Yes.
For kids. We also then go, the response can be maybe the kid looks over at the door. Okay, I know they heard the question. They understand what they're supposed to be doing. They didn't have to say something or do it right away, but I can at least get a clue that they're probably going to move in that direction. And if we think, I think increasingly people have talked about students with a label of PDA. Julie and I like the phrase or unpacking of that acronym as pervasive drive for autonomy. Some people call it a pathological demand avoidance, which you might really quickly understand why Julie and I like pervasive drive for autonomy. But I think that wait time gives an opportunity for autonomy. So now the kid can decide, okay, I'm going to stack one more block before I do it. Or I'm going to say, okay, but I need 1 minute, teacher. Like it gives some opportunity for the student to have sense of agency or autonomy. Whereas without the pause, we've solved it, told them, and said, this is how you'll do it and when you'll do it.
Yeah. And I'm somebody with a pervasive drive for autonomy in significant ways. And so these kinds of this formula really calms my nervous system and it makes me go, oh, thank goodness I have a part in this. No one's telling me what to do. And therefore I will happily or not even happily.
At least do it.
Yeah, I will do it. And in some cases, happily do it. And this is also really, really useful for collaborative experiences with kids. So like in high school, if let's just say there's one student that seems upset and you kind of come upon the group, you might say, oh, one person in the group seems upset. How might we check in with them? Right? So now it's like, oh, I understand the task is checking in with this other student and they're going to have lots of good ideas. It just supports what comes naturally from students, but they need a little support about what to do in the moment.
Versus always us directing and correcting, back to that, right?
Yeah.
So the handout, friends, has 10 main areas divided into early childhood, middle, and high school. Then within each age group or grade level, there are 5 examples. So I don't know, somebody's got to do the math for me, but that's like 15 times 10, I guess. So 150 examples on today's download, which is at inclusiveschooling.com/download 44. And Julie, I guess the only thing I'd like to make sure we close with, and you may have another example or something you want to do, but can we talked a little bit about students maybe with PDA, but how about students with disabilities in general? You already alluded to that this formula promotes inclusion, Why is it so important for students with disabilities in particular that we think about the stressors that directions and corrections can cause and interfere with their learning?
Yeah, so picture any student with a more significant disability or more significant support needs. What we find when we study their experience in school is they receive far more verbal directions and corrections than anyone else in the classroom, especially if a paraprofessional has been hired to support them, meaning there's a adult at the ready to provide directions and corrections every step of the way. And so it's even more important that both the paraprofessional who is providing that support knows and understands this. It's also imperative for people to think about the amount of verbal directions and corrections of any kind that any kid is receiving. So it usually tends to be way out of balance. And usually we're surprised when someone, bites their paraprofessional. It's like, I would have bit this person in about 3 minutes, and yet we're surprised. And it's really a problem of support. And the problem of support is too many directions, too many corrections, and too much verbal input.
And often, Julie, I think that looks like if you're the teacher and I'm the para, you say, open your books to page 67, then I repeat it to the kid. Open your books to page 67. Did you hear what Miss Julie said? So now the kid is getting everything in duplicates, not to mention that there may be mixed messages or mixed directions and corrections, even for a student that goes to multiple class periods and has different teachers throughout the day. If you just look at the additive effect of the number of directions and corrections kids have had before the end of the school day, it's a little overwhelming.
It's more than a little overwhelming, and it really needs to be looked at carefully. And so the way to look at it is to follow one kid with a significant disability around for just an hour and jot down. This is some of the research I've done. It's very highly complex. I literally make a little check mark or a little hatch mark each time they're given a direction or a correction. And you add that up, and it's incredibly overwhelming to kind of consider being on the other side of that. So, Christy, not only do people often parrot what's being said, but they will often then break it down. So it looks like this. Miss Christie said, turn to page 173. Look at me. Are you looking? Miss Christie said 173. That's right. Yep. Okay. Where are your eyes? Great. Where's your book? Okay. Now can you help me? Right. And it's just like so much verbal instead of let's put a sticky note on page 173 and provide silent support.
Yeah. And I think, Julie, in your example right then, you also showed not just only verbal, but you gave sort of these disguised directions and corrections. Like you said, is your book out? Are you looking at me? Where are your eyes? Are you ready? Those we say with our kind of Midwestern, nicety at the end. No offense to us in the Midwest, but, we just have that intonation. But it's still a direction. It's sort of saying your eyes are probably where they should be, or I'm redirecting you. So, friends, whether you're a para, a teacher, a parent, even if you're working with adults, so you leaders, how many times are you directing and correcting your staff? This is a handout you're going to want and to be thinking about, like Julie said, take some data and look to see. And, Julie often says, take success moments, success minutes. You might find a kid is most successful when there are fewer directions and corrections. So get your download at inclusiveschooling.com/download44.
Thank you for tuning in, and don't forget to subscribe and catch up on past episodes where we share valuable insights, straight talk, and practical steps to challenge outdated special education practices. You can find every episode with the show notes at inclusiveschooling.com/inclusion-podcast to build more inclusive schools together.